This is a case study for my movie Brotherly. This was my fourth short film, third fiction. This is me at Cours Écrire Ton Pot, which is a SODEC competition for short film screenplays. The learnings from this as a writing process, this was the most revisions I'd ever done on a screenplay. So I wanted to touch on that because I applied to the program with what I would call a V7. It was about 10 pages. And I thought I was ready to go to camera. This was as many rewrites as I've done on any of my previous short films. So I was like, I think this is solid. I won the Writers Guild of Canada prize for Best English Screenplay at this competition, which didn't come with a physical award. But it did come with $2,000 from the Writers Guild of Canada, which was cool.
Can I ask who was your mentor?
Pierre Larouche. Yeah, do you know him?
I actually do.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah,
really, really sweet guy. He was awesome. Now, the important thing to note, though, is I applied with a V7 that was 10 pages. By the time I got here, it was a V29 and it was 20 pages. So to give you context on, I think a lot of us are like, our project is great, it deserves the money, but it's like, I thought my project was great at V7, 10 pages, V29, 20 pages. By the time I went to camera with Brotherly, at this point it was called Do Not Resuscitate. By the time I went to camera with Brotherly, which was at various points 3,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and also The Tides That Bind Us, it was probably at around a V50. And as we'll talk about, there are many versions of the film, but they're roughly between 7 and 12 pages. So when I say iterative design, this is what I'm talking about. To be honest, I think a lot of us, all of these funds talk about how competitive they are. The challenge is that word is so overused that we don't really know what it means. It's like they'll say competitive, but then they might let 6 people into the SODEC lab at Cannes out of 29 applicants. Those are real stats where it's like, oh, that's actually like 1 in 5. I like those odds. So it's like, I wouldn't actually call a 20% success rate competitive. SODEC applications are truly competitive. And then I was like, okay, won a Writers Guild of Canada prize. Cavalry's coming. No. I was fortunately able to secure a producer in the form of Loaded Pictures, Sergio Curvy and Chaz Baudet, who were absolutely lovely. Okay, great. Now I have a production company on board. Cavalry's coming. No, we couldn't get the money from SODEC. I realized one of the reasons was they were very experienced in documentary, but SODEC wasn't comfortable really giving them their chance with their first fiction project. Again, that's risk mitigation. They're bureaucrats. I get it. You kind of have to figure out where is it like fair to hold them accountable for inequitable practices, and where is it like, look, I mean, it's the government, right? Like, they are taxpayer dollars, and for better or worse, like, it's important to do that empathy exercise and understand where they're coming from. So I was like, okay, I think I have to go in a different direction with Loaded. They said no hard feelings. We're in your corner. I still tagged them in all the posts for the success. They're EPs on the film because they tried. I got into bed with Colonel Films, which is a pretty well-known production company here, more established with fiction shorts. I had actually met them at Regal at this competition, but their slate was full. When I parted ways with Loaded, I saw them again. I met Leonie at Regal, and I was like, hey, the option rights are available again. What's your slate look like? And she was like, actually, we do have some room on our slate, and we liked the project last year, so let's continue the conversation. So again, marketing touch points, right? It's not a no, it's a not right now. So that was truly, their slate was full. A year later, they had room in their slate. And H264 came on board, who was Oscar nominated the year that we applied to SODEC. So it was a really strong application, and like we talked about in Créature Émergente, the gap between, even if you haven't gotten any money for development to hire a line producer, this is kind of like how competitive it is to apply, where it's like, I'm not getting money with like Colonel Films and H264 distributor attached. So it is competitive, and that's okay, because every time, not only did I learn a bunch, like I learned a lot, and like I would not have been able to incorporate a company. I would not be where I am if I hadn't learned all that stuff. And it takes time, and it's a little bit frustrating. But I'm basically going to give you like full transparency on all those stages in the iterative process of going from winning that award at Cours Écrire Ton Pot to trying to make this movie with the first production company, which I'm calling V1 because I really do see it as an iterative design process of how I got this movie through. Then first production company V2, that was for second applications with Loaded with some changes that I'll get to. Second production company V1, so that was with Colonel and H264. Second production company V2, where we attempted to reapply. And this is why I'm calling Sodec out for, they do make exceptions. They say the rules are that you can apply twice. It's not true. Even I got an exception. This was before the petition. And I learned that they have given up to 7 or 8 exceptions. That's why I mentioned at Emerging Creators Workshop, they continue to deny this. Now that is second source, that's hearsay on my part, but I personally know that I've been granted a 3rd application. So ultimately, those 4 versions of various applications from all of these potential funds, funding bodies, revenue sources, etc., ultimately led to the version that was made with my own company, which I incorporated. So first production company, V1. So this was with Loaded Pictures. The original budget was for $115 from Sodec. And there were some complications where, because we went through development with Co-Écrire ton cours, which is considered emerging creator stream, we became ineligible for production under Créateur Émergent because we had not done development under Créateur Émergent. So we could only apply for Volet 2 in the general stream, which once again, they say, well, we take into consideration projects that have gone through alternative pathways. I don't know what that means. I'm just sharing this because it's like not discouraging anyone to apply, but play the odds. There's a book I like called Thinking in Bets, which is by a former poker player. And that has been very helpful for me to be like, how many time units am I gonna allocate to bet on this potential partner? And so I just placed fewer bets on Sodec, but we're still placing bets. We just applied for a short for Créateur Émergent.
Just for the stats, man.
Yeah.
Anything.
I'm also positioning Lisa now under the company so I can do the politics work, and now she's like the main producer. Backing
Branding.
Okay, so with Loaded, we applied. Our budget was $60,000 from Canada Council for the Arts, $50,000 from Calc, $115,000 from Sodec, $25,000 in tax credits, $250,000 for a short film. As we've started to talk about, this actually doesn't make any sense, and I think it spoke to. I'm gonna say this in a way that I truly mean with no prejudice. Like we all learned together. They had never done a fiction film. As I learned, and they learned, that wasn't actually a feasible budget because Canada Council can work with Sodec. The artist must retain their rights until the project is complete. And then you can, for example, then license the footage to the production company. And then the production company that would then have the rights can continue making the project. So that's again kind of like people say things as if they're very binary because that would be such an unusual way to make a film that probably few people have done it. In fact, once I got Canada Council money, I pitched it to Colonel because the program officer kind of helped me. They didn't tell me you could do that, but they clarified what you have to do to fulfill the mandate. And I was like, oh, Colonel, I finally figured it out. Like we can start shooting this thing. We can shoot the kids in the water before winter, and then I can close the project and license that to you, and then we'll have some proof of concept. And they were like, this sounds complicated. We're not interested. Our business model is based on the Quebec way, Sodec, Calc, tax credits. And that would, while it would be creative, would be a risk and it would be complicated. So no thanks. And then we went our separate ways. I started the company. But again, great conversation, super friendly. It wasn't like a bad breakup by any means. But anyway, going back to Loaded. So we realized it was unlikely we were going to get Sodec. So we switched to the Arts Council version with Canada Council and Calc, and that the tax credits would likely be gone, which, as Lisa and I have now learned, is not necessarily true. That's another kind of myth that's like tax credits are useless on a short film, but Kathy's gotten a substantial amount of tax credits. We have tax credits to submit. Second production company, so this was with Colonel. They were like, okay, we can't use Canada Council, so apply for Calc. We'll apply for Sodec. There's also this funny thing in Quebec and Sodec where they want a producer investment. So they threw $10,000 producer investment in the budget. It's just one of these things that they like expect for really no reason. They want to say you have skin in the game, but it's stupid because what ends up happening is you just have to defer it from any potential profit or revenue. So the skin in the game is actually a risk that you won't be able to pay your mortgage. So it's another one of these things that the government has now come to expect, but it puts us in a compromised position. So I don't appreciate it. But it's what they expect.
Our skin in the game is a tax credit because they're already making.
Oh, the tax credit, yeah, and then you have to take out a loan because now it's in your budget.
Yeah.
You take out an interim loan.
That's bloody the skin in the game.
Which again is why we're advocates for, maybe I won't speak for Lisa, but like I'm an advocate for like, who said they left the tax credits out of the budget?
I did.
Great. I appreciate that you did that. I think we need to start going back to tax credits were created so we could be rewarded for the hard work of making a cultural product. We would get it back, and then we would fund pre-development to keep the lights on at the company and pay for an office space and things like that. Another example, I just applied for writing with Calc. Previously, I got low scores on the budget because apparently I didn't have the experience to charge the minimum for a first draft. But I realized I had made the mistake because Calc asks you to adapt it by week. And so I took the 25K from WGC standards, I played their game for the number of weeks, and it came out to like 1,700 a week, which I don't think is unreasonable for a writer, award-winning writer. But they looked at that, and I guess someone who lives in who knows where was like, I don't think this guy deserves 1,700 a week for their first screenplay. My point is, they say use industry rates, but it's still filtered through individuals to administer. So to A/B test this, I submitted the exact same application a second time, but I only put 1 week, 24,990. And in the notes, I put, this is the WGC minimum for a first draft. And that score went up from like fair to very good. Now, it would have been a different jury, so it's not a pure A/B test. But essentially what I pushed back on was that they forced me to take the bare minimum and divide it by weeks. I forced them by putting 1 week times this to read the note that justified that this is a flat fee. So my point there is it's not impossible to challenge expectations. You have to accept that they have expectations. And if you are not doing what they expect, just explain it, okay? Okay, so what happened with Colonel was then, we got denied Calc and Sodak, so we were gonna resubmit. There was a bit of confusion, and I don't know if this is their perspective, but the way I perceived it is we had misaligned and we missed the deadline to resubmit immediately after for January. I think their slate was full and we missed the deadline, and that was a little there was a bit of friction on my side because of that. That led to me reapplying to the Canadian Arts Council with the same application. I think that's how I don't remember for sure, but it was fine. I mean, it was over the winter. I think we had to wait for the feedback from SODEC to inform our next revision and things like that. I was a bit dejected from the whole, like, we made the top 8 and I've been working on this now for 5 years. Yeah, so I had a bit of a bump there. Ultimately, I realized that this, and thanks to the Access BIPOC program, I realized, look, I am not going to make it if I continue to rely on this system. All it takes is one missed deadline, and now my life is stalled for another 8 months. Maybe, if I even get it next time. I incorporated my own company because Canada Council of the Arts, they finally gave me 60, well, not they finally, it's just I finally raised funds on my own with the 60K. Not really on my own. Loaded and Colonel had helped me redevelop and revise these materials. They were stronger because of these partnerships. But essentially, I raised the 60K from Canada Council for the Arts, didn't get Calc. So I finally raised some money and I didn't get Calc again. But I was like, basically, I called up the Canada program, or I forget how it went down, but I went to I talked to Colonel. They were like, okay, that's clever that you figured out that technically we can use the money to shoot something, but it's just too complicated for us. So I went back to Canada Council. I was like, I finally got this money and I can't use it apparently. So anyway, Canada Council was like, you know what? We've already allocated this in the budget. Just accept it, and then we can hop on a call and have a more candid conversation. We hopped on the call, and they explained that it's like, we're an arts council. We're investing in your art process, in your practice. What you have to deliver is a 2-page report with everything you learned from this investment, and because it's a creation grant, you have to shoot something. I was like, oh, I think I get what's going on here. So that's what I did. Went different ways with Colonel, said I'm gonna make this on my own. Did the Access BIPOC program, which teaching me how to incorporate my own company. Shot the entire $60,000 worth of footage with the goal that then I would have the best looking footage that I could have, and then I'll figure out what to do with post after. I'll wrap up the project, I'll apply for more post-production with Canada Council, I'll have an assembly maybe that I could pitch to Cal, but that was it. The way I ended up finishing the project was there is a film fund out of California, but the program director, Chris Hyde, actually is in Calgary. They will give you 7.5K US for a 5-minute film on themes of mental health and mental illness. So it's still competitive. You still have to submit. But basically, I hopped on he was very generous with his time. We still collaborate, and I'll tell you more about them later. I went to them, hopped on a call, after seeing their webinar, which was recommended to me from a friend in the Real World E20 group. So, that's why it's like, really, I'm all about sharing these opportunities because any of this came from other people sharing. We have these WhatsApp groups where someone's like, oh, apply for this fund. Hey, the deadline's coming up for chicken and egg, the deadline. And it's like, we really have to support each other and do the like rising tides lifts all boats. They're all going to say we're oversubscribed. That's okay because that's how we prove there's a demand for these resources. That's how we push them to then get more money to support us. So we really can't like treat these as scarce opportunities. So thanks to Rosie Chu Peacock, I learned about this opportunity, hopped on a call with Chris Hyde, and I was like, hey, listen, I've got $60,000 worth of footage in the can. I know I can cut a great 5-minute version. Like, could we do that? Like, could this be a finishing fund? And I promise I'll give you a 5-minute cut. And he was like, look, never been done before, but sure, as long as I get a 5-minute cut because they fund 10 short films that then they take to education. I'm looking at you, Colin, because you were talking about like sustainability. So it was like reading the brief and understanding the mandate so you can pitch a win-win situation. Outside of like SODAC, people are very flexible as long as you give them what they need to generate revenue, achieve their objectives, right? So what they needed was a 5-minute video film so that they could screen it with the 9 others, tour the country, tour the US, and open conversations about mental health and mental illness. So I applied, I got that. And then same thing happened with the IFSA Film Fund out of Ontario for South Asian filmmakers. Same sort of thing. Hopped on a call and I was like, can I apply if I've already shot stuff, but I can't finish it? And for I think they gave me $14,000. It was supposed to be 15. We won't get into that. But it was like, hey, you give me this $15,000, you're gonna get a $75,000 film. And he was like, can't argue with that. Apply. Got that. That led to a 7-minute cut of the film. And that was because their fiscal year ended, they delivered the money late, and then their fiscal year ended in like May, even though the festival was in October. So I actually had to give them a somewhat unfinished version without final color and sound, so they could close the books, which again was kind of like, okay, that's not my version of the movie, but they like it enough. They're satisfied. It's going to screen at their festival, but that won't be my version. So I actually have 4 versions of this short film that have allowed me to get to the finish line, generate more revenue, pay my team, like the 7.5K US, so 10K Canadian and 15K. That's how I finished post. That's how I paid Outpost MTL. That's how I paid my composer. That's how I paid everyone. I also structured their deal memos so that they got bonuses if I got funding. So everyone was bought into the film. They wanted to help me make this film because they had all been touched by similar themes. They all got $750. Everyone on the film got paid $250 a day because I was trying to figure out how to make this equitable. And the ACTA AIP rates is $250 a day. So I said everyone on the team is going to get $250 a day. So the PA gets $250 a day. The lead actor gets $250 a day. The editor, even though they're putting in more than 3 days work, they get $250 a day. Everyone, well, it's a short film. We're all here to get experience. This is the only equitable approach that I can think of, so that it's not like the DP who's shooting Lexus commercials at $3,500 a day anyway is getting $1,000 on a short film, and the PA who's working 16 hours driving tired gets nothing. Like, that doesn't seem fair. So that's how I approached it. And so what I did with Post was they all signed on for $750 roughly, but in the clause it had like if I get calc, because I reapplied for calc, it was like, if I get calc, you'll get like a $1,250 bonus. If I get this, you'll get a $500 bonus. If I get this, you'll get a $500 bonus. And so since we got I think it was I think Voices covered the base $750 for the entire post team. And then this was the only one we got. So yeah, I paid out like an extra $500 bonus to everyone who worked on post. Not common, but I think it was as fair as it could be.
For the IFSA, was that the government? And I guess Voices with Impact, I was wondering if there was like, if they're like, well, you have to spend the money, like the optics of you spending the money not in the province, in the state is not an issue.
Voices with Impact is an international fund. Anyone can apply. The majority of the fund comes from, I think they rebranded at the time. I think they were like the American Psychiatric Association, MSOPA, I think. And I met the guy in California.
But like essentially an independent nonprofit that doesn't, it's not like it was an independent nonprofit where they didn't have to justify that the money gets spent. And if so was a similar type thing where they didn't have to justify that it was spent in Ontario.
So IFSA, I think, gets its money mainly from Telefilm, actually, with some from RBC and maybe some from BMO. I don't know how the structure is. We had to include their credits in the film contractually.
Was there any
Yeah, I'm
reporting?
not super comfortable talking about where they get their money because I don't know. But what I can say is for them, look, as long as they got a 5-minute version, they were thrilled and it's great. And so IFSA, yeah, I think it was a little more structured, but like that fund is all run by basically like the organization IFSA is South Asian. There's a film festival. Now there's the Talent Fund out of Mississauga and they're doing this community initiative. They also have heritage music. It's like a music festival. So their incentive is culture. South Asian culture in Mississauga. So yeah, once they like sign off, like I said, I had to get them a cut in time to close their fiscal year end, which that kind of sucked a little because they could have had a much better version if they'd given me a little more flexibility. But you know, whatever. They're happy. I'm happy. Like, I mean, that's again where I'll put my artist ego aside. Like Jerry Seinfeld says, pain is knowledge rushing in. So right now it's painful, but if I can gain that knowledge, then I can yield return on investment from that knowledge for the rest of my life. So basically, I had the footage, closed out with Canada Council, that I rewrote the script from the 20, again, that's how I got to like V50. I rewrote the 20-page script at the V49 that would have cost $250,000 roughly, to a $60,000 budget, which I believe that's actually turned out to a much more poetic film because it's much more visually driven. There's only like 6 lines of dialogue in the 9-minute final cut. Those funds, basically selling off a 5-minute version, selling off a 7-minute version, helped me get to the 12-minute director's cut, which I licensed to CBC at $400 a minute to generate $4,400 in revenue. To get there, though, it took like 4 films to get there. And we're figuring out the tax credits now. The other thing that happened with the CBC license, it was just kind of funny because at that point I'd known who was in the role at the time. She'd licensed 2 of my shorts. And so I emailed her and I told her I was going to be at TIFF and we emailed back and forth. And then she had to cancel on me last minute TIFF, and I was like, there's no way she's interested in this movie. Like, if this was a yes, she would have put me out of my misery and just said, yeah, we want the movie. Let's meet at TIFF to lock the deal. But anyway, so we rescheduled. Reschedule was like the last day of TIFF, and I was like, it's now or never. We finally got together. It turns out she was on the jury at TIFF. She was just swamped. Again, people are just busy, right? They loved the film. They wanted to buy the film. She just wanted to do the deal in person because I had said I was at TIFF. If I had said, here's the movie, do you want it? Maybe she would have said yes via email. So that was the 12-minute version. Then I screened the film at the world premiere Tasveer Film Festival in Seattle. And at that point, it had been like a month since I'd seen it. And it got shortlisted for TIFF, but I didn't get in. So the premiere was at Tasveer. And I saw it, and I hadn't seen it for a while. It worked really well. People were crying within the first few minutes. But there were these moments that I realized the 12-minute version, there's an epilogue that kind of robs the audience, but it clarifies the character's journey beyond the story too much in a way that it's very beautiful. Some of the images you saw in the trailer were from the epilogue, so those are just gone. But I had to kill those darlings because it was robbing the audience of the opportunity to go out into the lobby after and say, what did you think of that? Because I was making it clear that the character would be okay. But it's like, I realized in the short film medium, in the way it would be presented at festivals, which is in a program, I needed to give them the opportunity to to engage with it and project themselves onto the story and come away and want to talk about it. And there were other moments that I trimmed up. So those are like all the versions of this short film that ultimately helped me make the final version that'll screen at Fantasia. That's the 8-minute and 43-second cut, which I will continue to use those opportunities with the theatrical screenings to let people know that the director's cut is going to be on CBC later this year. Hopefully people will be curious to see both versions. It's just a short film, so probably not a ton of people. But in my way, that's kind of social media. I'm also sharing this because I hope that then you'll be like, oh, I want to see all 4 versions of this. So as filmmakers, like how often do you get to see 4 versions of a short film, right? So then I started a YouTube channel because which I would encourage all of you to subscribe, because I will be doing, I think with CBC's exclusive license, I probably won't be able to release this until 2027. But I plan to do a presentation where it'll be like a live commentary, but with all 4 versions. So I can say, this is what was cut from this is what was cut from this is why this was important. So incorporation really did help me break through this Sodak glass ceiling. And I think it is a good case of how much I was able to learn. Yeah, so independent film producer makes $19 an hour in Quebec. The minimum wage is $15. So think about that, because again, it's like, yeah, I think we can generate more revenue than that per hour. And then we're here at Futurepreneur, for example, because I was, from what I understand, I think the first filmmaker who ever applied to every year they send a delegation of entrepreneurs to wherever the G20 is happening. So countries from all over the world send entrepreneurs. So I was on the delegation of the 45 Canadian entrepreneurs that went. And that was not only a great experience, I got to go to Brazil. I learned from a ton of people, one of whom we're working on with the Talent to Watch film. He's a Black entrepreneur who acts in all Black theater troupe here. And we're here at Futurepreneur because of that, thing. So there's a lot of really cool opportunities, I think, outside of Sodak that we can take advantage of. We just have to, look for them and share with each other. And yeah, so iterative design is at the heart of everything I do, which again, like I gave up on filmmaking, went to Mattel, went to Shopify. I think that was like some side quests that I needed to do to learn how to read a brief, how to understand what are stakeholders really looking for, what do they really mean, how to read between the lines. And this is how now I'm able, I don't think there are a lot of filmmakers who have gained the experience that we did from those opportunities to be able to think this way and think outside the box and just say okay, this bureaucrat needs this so they don't get fired or experience pain, like Dale was saying. How do we provide pain relief for whatever shit their boss is giving them?
I have a question just before we move on far from the topic. I guess just to kind of come back to these other sources of funding that you found, like Voices with Impact and IFSA. I'm wondering, because that's one of the things I'm always struggling with, is all of these smaller funds that I'm not aware of. And a lot of the times I become aware of it because someone else I know, applied for it. I was wondering, do you have any kind of tactic or suggestions in terms of how to discover them? And I think
you're looking at everyone in this room.
Yeah.
We're going to support each other,
Yeah.
and we're going to share these opportunities, and we're going to increase demand, and it's going to create opportunity.